Hey folks, so this is part 2 of a 2-part episode. I hope you caught part 1. Please enjoy part 2.
Like one of my favorite work stories. Ooh, God. Amber Ruffin had written a book with her sister about like weird experiences that they experience as Black, and I feel like I could write a book about just being a person of color out in the world. But yeah, I feel like every person of color could write that book. My favorite one was, I work in a place where it's people around my age and older is generally where we are. And so it's a lot of people with new kids and everything like that. And so it's a common thing for people to bring their kids into the office and like show them around the office and everything. And it's very cute. And then they'll come to mine. And it's always funny because you can tell the parents who this is the first time that child is seeing a person of color, like really meeting them, because like they'll go around and shake everybody's hands, and then I will hold out my hand to shake their hand, and they will just look at my hand like it is a weapon.
Yep.
And I just remember one of my coworkers, like the little girl looked like she was going to cry, and I felt so bad. And the parents they didn't understand why this was happening. And they were like, what's going on? And the little girl just was going to cry. And so they brought her over to the break room, which is literally separated between my cubicle. There's just like a thin wall between it. And so they're over there, and I can hear the little girl say that, is she dirty? And it was just like it was just like, oh, you guys haven't had that conversation, have you? And I just remember my coworker came back and just had the mortified look on their faces. They were like that idea of like, oh God, I'm raising a racist child. And it was just like, no, it's just you haven't diversified your social circle yet, and you should do that as soon as possible. And then they'll come over there and they'll be like, okay, no, this is my very good coworker. She's very nice. Shake her hand. And I'm sitting there being like, oh God, don't do this to either of us. This is the most uncomfortable thing ever. She looks like she's gonna cry, and this is gonna be her first encounter with a person of color. Like, could we just not?
That
it's just
certainly
like,
sounds familiar.
Yeah, and it's like, I hate this so much. It's just like, instead, like, I wish people would just be like, all right, if you're gonna have that conversation, have that conversation of like, no, she just has a different skin tone, like how mommy has blue eyes and daddy has brown eyes, same thing. And then just go over there, and she can, like, again, I'm a geeky person. I have now fully embraced my geekdom, so my cubicle does that as well. I've got like Hello Kitty and Harley Quinn and plushies all over my cubicle. Like, bring your kid over there and be like, look at all the cool things she has around her cubicle. Like, introduce me like I'm a person. Like, there's so much more to me than just that. Like, you could show her that I am a fully formed person and not just my skin tone, and that would be so much better. Like, I feel like that's the introduction that should happen.
Yeah, I'm certain that everyone in this state has been someone's first actual experience with the person of color.
And that's the funny thing is, like, I tell people that story, and almost inevitably the reaction that comes back from a lot of like my white friends is like, no, you can't be the first person of color that child has seen. And I'm like, no, yeah, very easily in the state of Minnesota I can be.
Oh yeah,
I promise you that. Even among my adult coworkers, I'm almost certain that for a lot of them I was their first encounter with a person of color.
Yeah. For me, my even now, I'm almost 40. Most of my social circle is white.
Yeah.
This state is almost
very white.
It is very white. I mean, not, Oregon levels, but it's up there.
Yeah. I mean, like, I always make fun of the running joke in our family is like, why did my parents who come from the Philippines choose to come to Minnesota? Of all the places you could choose to immigrate, why here?
Oh, Lordy.
Yeah, like, we have our cameras off right now, but like I said, I have like 2 blankets on, and my house has the heating on and everything, but I'm always so cold. And my poor husband, who is the whitest ice troll you've ever met, and so he loves a cold house, and I'm like, why did we move here? We could be in sunny California.
Yeah, it is way too cold here. When I was a child, I used to have to hide in my mom's winter coat while waiting for the school bus. Because even with my own winter gear, it was too cold for me. It would just pierce right through me.
I know. I'm like, I was not made for this. Like, clearly, I was not made for this climate.
Yeah. Minnesota is 82.85% white,
Yeah.
6.41% black or African American, 4.82% Asian.
Yep. Well, and
So,
the funny thing about that is like there's so many different kinds of Asian in like Minnesota, and we so often just get clumped. I mean, just in general, Asians
oh
get
yeah.
clumped together. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just like I love the idea that like people think that we're a monolith. And it's just like you realize that until I tell you, you probably can't even tell that I am Asian.
As I recall, the with poverty levels, say,
Oh
Asian
yeah.
group, different ethnic groups make up the most
Yeah.
extremes.
Yep. We have the widest wage gap of all the different minorities.
Yeah.
And again, like so much of it is like if you look at the breakdown of the numbers, it's not a perfect matching of it, but so much of it is based on colorism.
Yes.
Like the darker you are, the harder it is for you to succeed in this country, and that's just going to be the truth of it.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Like I think I just had this conversation again, white husband. It is what it is. But you have that conversation about how like there are the different levels of privilege. Like I know that as like within the Asian community, I probably have less privilege than a lot of my like particularly a lot of my Asian friends. Although that definitely changed over COVID because I didn't get the COVID harassment because I don't look like that kind of Asian. So I didn't really get it. I got a lot of the like go back to where you came from because immigrant panic. But I didn't get a lot of the COVID stuff, which I'm very grateful for. But like in general, outside of the terms of this pandemic, for the most part, I get a lot more harassment and like sort of the bad kind of prejudice than a lot of my Asian friends. But like it's one of those things where it's just like I also realize that like as an Asian person, I have so much more privilege than like a lot of other minority groups, and it's just like yeah. There are different levels that happen in this country, and
Yeah.
generally speaking, the darker you go on that skin tone level, the harder it's gonna be for you.
Ali Wong, in one of her stand-ups, she said that she and her husband, she had called it the two types of Asian, being city Asian and jungle Asian.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. And I mean, again, growing up, my whenever I would close my eyes and think of the Philippines, the only thing I would think of was like the pictures you would see in National Geographic, where it was, people in, tribal gear living in houses on stilts or, working in rice fields and whatnot. And like that was what I had in my head. And it's just like that's what most people think about when they think about those kind of nations. And it's just like you guys don't realize that like yeah, there are those areas, and absolutely like poverty porn, companies love to put that image out in the world, but there are also actual cities. Like Manila is a thing.
Yeah. Ali Wong had said that because she is Chinese and Vietnamese, and
Yeah.
her husband is Japanese and Filipino.
Hmm.
And that line stuck with me.
Yeah. It's definitely a thing.
Yeah. But, it also comes up, well, not that line, but how there's the such range of experiences when it comes around to election season.
Oh yeah.
Because of voting trends, who will vote
Yeah.
conservative and who will vote liberal based off of people's experiences.
Yep.
I was like, yeah, no, it's going to be different because everybody's different.
Yes, nothing's a monolith, but I do appreciate that a lot of like particularly within the Asian community, we are definitely moving in a better direction than we used to. Because again, like I said, when I was young, assimilation was a thing where a lot of Asian families, it's why we have the common experience of for a lot of Asian kids is that was what it was that your parents pushed you to be as American as possible. You had like the two camps. Either your parents wanted you to stay as traditional as possible, or the camp of the Asians who wanted your kids to be as American as possible. And that was sort of the thing. And both camps, oddly enough, both voted very conservatively for the most part. It was that idea of like we can be the model minority, we can be the good ones that people will like. And I think we've started to see, after having so many decades now of trying to be that model minority, realizing that it is not paying off the way that we had thought it would. that the idea that like if white people saw us as almost white, that we would get the same privilege as white people. And it was like, oh no, but you still see us as almost white, where now we're just the cudgel that you use to beat all the other minorities. While you get to decide on a whim whether or not we get to be treated like white people or not. And it's just like, oh, that's not good. That's not how we want. That's not actually what we want. And so you're seeing a shift in demographics of Asian people starting to be like, yeah, no, we're going to vote more Democratic because they actually seem to kind of get it a little bit more than the other side.
Yeah. And I was hoping that part of me would have expected, that change to have started earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that always comes to mind for me. Did you see Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember the scene when when the protest starts happening and the Japanese shopkeeper says, I'm black too, before when they're about to smash his windows.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes. I mean, in a
yeah, I mean,
I am a person of color.
Yeah, we have so much more that we have in common with our experiences than we have that differentiates us. And it's one of those things where it's like, we really should have found the common ground faster than we did.
Yes.
And I think, again, a lot of it is to do with the first generation Americans versus immigrants, and it was very much for my mom and my dad. They were immigrants. They had come to this country as strangers who were just trying to survive by fitting in. That was their whole goal. Was we just want to blend in. We want to meld within the parameters that have been set in this society, and that was their goal. And I think as first gen people, me and my brother, at least our experience was, we grew up with that mentality, but then we were seeing that it wasn't. Well, actually, my brother is actually my stepbrother. He's half white. And so he actually could blend in a lot better than I could because he's several shades lighter than I am. And he also has a different last name than I do. And his last name is White, as a very white name because his dad was white. So he could actually blend. Like a lot of people, when they look at him, they think he's some kind of Mediterranean white, like Greek or Italian or something. That's generally what they think when they see him. And so he could kind of blend a little bit better. But I can't. No one's ever going to look at me and think I'm white. It's just never going to happen. And so I remember having that idea and like growing up with that idea of that no matter what I did, I could act as white as I wanted to be. And I'm never going to be a white person. And that's just what it is. And again, like so much of it was people would treat me nicely if they knew me. If they had been around the side of me that acted white, they were fine with me. But if you didn't know me, if I was just a person walking the street, I was just another brown girl. And they would treat me however they treated any other brown person. And that was just how it was going to be for the rest of my life. And that's just how it's going to be. And I think looking at that our generation grew up with that idea of that we're just never going to be able to be fully integrated. So why are we trying so hard to do it? And I think that's what it is that the second generation is seeing, or the first generation Americans are looking at that and being like, this isn't what you promised. This isn't what the deal was supposed to be. And if that's what it's going to be, I don't want it. And even I think, we're getting to the point now, especially because I think social media and media culture in general is showing perspectives of people who we didn't see so often. And now we're hearing their stories. And I think so many of us are now looking at like, even if we had gotten that promise, if we could be like my brother who does 100% when he is off with his family, because he also married a white woman, when he's off with her side of the family and out and about, he gets to walk around like a white boy. He really, really does. And I think it affords him a privilege where he doesn't have to think about politics as much as I do. He doesn't have to think about a lot of that stuff. And I look at that and I see that and I'm like, even if I got that, I don't think I want it because he still has to live with her family who, again, whenever me and my mom, like I remember going to their wedding, going to her brother's wedding, and we would be in that room and people would look at us like we were the help. Like I had people ask me to get them champagne.
Oof.
Yeah. And it was just, they would look at us like we didn't belong there. And I remember there's all those comments of like, I remember my niece on one of her birthdays was given a new doll, and they were like, see, and you can stop playing with that other doll because she's so dirty she looks, and then petered off and then looked at me and my mom. Yeah, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't like, and that he has to live with that forever, even if they're not talking specifically about him. Like, he has to live with that, and I'm like, even if I could have that experience of walking through the world like a white girl, would I want that, knowing that everybody darker than me or anybody who couldn't pass, that's how they look at us. Like, I don't think I want that. And I think a lot of, again, that first generation Americans who are looking at that, I think we're starting to see that that's like, that's not the world I think anybody should want to live in.
Yeah, it is frightful and unsettling.
Yeah. And I also think it's like, again, like you said, most of our social circles white, and I think it's a rude awakening to a lot of white people too, that's the world they live in, because a lot of them, they either don't notice when they say things like that, and so it just kind of goes over their head. And for a long time, for the most part, we just didn't say anything. Like, I very distinctly remember being a child and we just didn't talk about it, and you just let it, like, wash over you, and it was going to be the burden you carried with you. And you didn't tell people. But now, because we feel more like we can tell those stories, or at the very least we'll tell that story on social media, and then somehow peter back to somebody else. And it was one of those things where it's just like, I think more white people are waking up to the idea that, like, oh yeah, we probably shouldn't do that. Yeah. That's probably not a thing we want to do. Or the opposite effect of the idea of the people who they now feel like the white guilt and are like, no, I'm not like that. I don't do that. And it's just like, yeah, you probably do. And it's it is what it is. It's just, you did it, and don't do it again. That's all.
Yeah, I remember when one of my friends realized that she had something that she used to say that was, racist.
Yeah.
And she didn't realize it at the time. And I just didn't, have the energy to say anything about it at the time. So I just didn't. And some years later, we were talking about something, and she realized something that she used to say that she doesn't anymore. And she said to me, wait, why did you stay friends with me, after I had said that? I'm like, I knew you'd come around.
Yeah.
I mean, the kind of person you personally are, I knew you'd come around.
Yeah, it's that idea of like, are you doing it out of malice, or are you doing it because this is the world that we all grew up in, And I think that makes such a huge difference of it. Like, again, like the person who yells at me in the street to go back to where I came from, and I just want to yell back, what, you mean Richfield? And it's like, it's like, I was born literally like 50 miles from where we're currently standing. Like, what do you want from me? Versus like my coworker who will come up to me, yell up to me. Like, I remember once she came up to me and she was just like, oh God, I have this person on the phone and they're speaking rapid Spanish to me. Can you talk to them? And like my other coworker turns around, she's like, that she's not Hispanic, right? And it's just like, oh yeah, not all brown people speak Spanish. I took French in high school.
I also took French in high school.
And have not used the language other than like watching movies.
Yeah. Well, no, I did use it 2 other occasions.
Oh.
One was talking to this one guy. I was on a trip to Denver, Colorado. Ooh. And some guy was talking to me in French for some reason, I forget why. And I only understood half of what he was saying. Yeah. And the other reason was because some kids were swearing at me in Spanish, and I knew just enough French to know what they were saying.
Yeah, like, yeah.
Don't say that, kids. You're not supposed to say that here.
Yeah.
How do you know what I was saying? French is close enough to Spanish, I can tell.
They're both Latin-based guys.
Yeah, I've forgotten most of the French I've learned.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I go back every once in a while to like Duolingo and like play the game a little bit and feel like superior in the idea that I can get past the basic levels, and then I hit the harder ones and I'm like, I'm done with you now.
Yep. Oh, there was this one time when I was a teenager, though, standing in line at the bank. The days of having to go to the bank to do anything.
Yes.
And there was this, line of white people ahead of me trying to speak Spanish to the teller.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just, not really paying attention because I had other things on my mind anyway. Mm-hmm. And I get up to her and I say hello, and she says, "Hello, don't try to speak Spanish to me. I don't speak Spanish." And I said, "Okay,
Why
good,
is that
I
your first
guess.
response?
I don't speak Spanish either." And then she looks up at me and it's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Just white
Yeah.
people all day have been speaking Spanish at me." I'm like, "Oh, yeah. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
I
do
get that a
that.
lot
I
too.
don't speak Spanish."
I get a lot of people, kids again, small and cute. And so I get a lot of people, a lot of particular like retail workers or wait staff at restaurants coming up to me panicked and being like, "Can you talk to this person? Because I don't speak Spanish." And I have to be like, "I'm so sorry. Neither do I." I feel like I should have. I feel like if I could talk to past high school me, or I suppose junior high me, because I took French back in junior high, I would have been like, just take the Spanish, girl. Just do it.
It's such a it's used so often around,
Yeah,
not even just
it's
here in
so
the
much more
US,
useful.
but around the world.
Yeah, it's such a useful language. I wish I'd learned, but again, I grew up with that idea of people thinking, like, assuming I must speak Spanish. That like when the opportunity came, I was just like, no, no, I don't.
Yeah, it's
And I
the
wish I'd just been like, no, it's fine, girl. Just get over it. Just do it because it'll be more. You will get more mileage out of it than you will your French.
it is the number 4 spoken language in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's number 4 because of colonialism.
I mean, yeah.
Number 1 is English.
Yep.
Number 2 is Mandarin. Number
Hmm.
3 is Hindi. Then 4 is Spanish. 5 is French. So yeah,
I always keep telling myself that I should learn it because it can't. Like, again, I know French. I mean, the basics of French, so I'm like, it probably wouldn't be hard to learn. I feel like I should, but then it's like it's so much harder to find. Again, like who has the time?
yeah.
Where are my 5 hours?
To my understanding, it's easier to learn than Italian or Portuguese,
Yes, yes.
even though those are also romantic languages.
Hmm. Well, particularly if you have French as a background, because so many of the words are very similar. So it would be really easy. It's just time.
Yeah. Going back to a thought I had though, so you had mentioned that your husband is white.
Hmm.
My partner is also white. Have you received much flack or pushback for having a white partner?
Um, Personally, I have not. I mean, my parent, again, my mom, my brother's half white. My mom had zero problem with it, and my dad didn't care either. So family, usually it's a thing where family is the one that cares a whole lot, but my parents never had an issue. I think particularly because again, they knew like in Minnesota, most of the people there were white, and that was just that was what was available, and that's what was there, and so they just never cared one way. Again, they were more concerned about whether or not I was going to date girls. That was their big concern, and I think I like to think that my dad would have been fine with it, and he would have made his peace with it. I think my mom is still very much where she's very happy that I married a man. And I think that was her biggest concern. She didn't care so much about race and whatnot. She cared about that, and I was just like, all right, well, it could have very easily gone the other way, but that's fine, whatever. And friend wise, my group of friends have always been again mostly white, and I think that was just gonna be the idea that was where they kind of, I think for the most part, they always just sort of assumed that everyone was gonna date a white guy. I think that was just what was available, that was out there in most of our schools. So it was what it was. I think walking around sometimes it gets a little weird, and a lot of that actually is just I think because tall guys. I don't know why, but I've always dated tall people, really, really tall people, and so I always look child-sized next to them. I think that's been the biggest thing of just I'm always like male or female, always been just so much shorter than all my partners. And right now I come up to just below, not even just below, several inches below his shoulder. And so we'll be walking around and people always do the double take because I think I'm too young to be to be with him.
Oh dear.
Oh, I did. Oh, no, I have to take that back. One of my relationships, I remember I was with a white girl, and when we would walk around, we would get more. Again, you would get that difference between people who looked at you like you were a walking porno
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was definitely that. And oddly enough, I got a lot of flack from people, men of color, who were really unhappy with it. Like the idea that like she had stolen me away, which is weird because I don't get that when I date white guys. But with this one girl, like we would get dirty looks all the time about the idea that I was stolen. And I wonder if that was because she was definitely on the butcher side of it, like still very female presenting, but on the butcher side. And I think they I don't know, they perceived her as a threat. It was weird.
Yeah, I would bet
But
that it's race and gender combined for that one.
yeah. It was a very strange thing. I do remember that. So it was definitely one of those things where we had to be more careful in public.
Yeah.
Also, there were different times where we were both a little we were both definitely a little bit like that. We'd get in those moods of like, no, we're gonna just shove in your face now that you're gonna be a jerk about it.
Yeah. Have you dated other persons of color?
I have dated Asian guys before, but again, like that, this could sound so weird, but like I don't like again, I'm a banana. I'm very much a banana where I'm a white girl on the inside. So it was always very much one of those things of like, and I had this issue with Jewish guys too, where I was a nice girl to date, but they were never going to bring me home. Like I was not the girl that they were going to introduce to their parents. Like it was to the point where there was one guy who it was while we were studying abroad and his mother would Skype with him randomly, like during the day. She would just call up and whenever she did he would answer, and I remember if I was in his room I would have to hide.
Oh dear. Yeah, no, that's not good.
Yeah. So it was definitely one of those things where it's just like, oh, on multiple levels, this is not a relationship that's going to last.
Yeah, no. No. Well,
But I mean, to a certain point, I get it because again, like I'm outspoken and I'm vaguely unapologetic about anything about myself. So I get like I remember you in one of your questions, you were like, "Is there anything you don't want me to talk about?" I'm like, "Not particularly." Like I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm at that point in my life, and for the most part, I've kind of always been at that point in my life where it's just like, you take me as I am, or you can just back away. It's fine. Anybody who can't handle me, I don't need you in my life. I don't need to be censoring myself for whatever reason. I have the inability and do not have the patience to do so.
I ask because I don't know if I've told you this. I might have. And I'm certain I've written about it. At one point, my mom had asked me if I'd ever date a black girl. And aside from the fact that she used girl instead of woman, which is
whole
another
other
thing.
Politics.
I was like, well, I mean, I would if I met someone who get along with.
What are their other qualities? Yes.
And so, there's so many things in dating someone. And she's like, well, you seem to only, most of your friends are white and most of the people you spend your time with are white. I'm like, Mom, I live in Minnesota.
Yeah.
I go to science fiction conventions and I used to work at the Renaissance Festival. And I went to all-white private high school.
Oh, God.
A Catholic military high
God.
school.
Yeah. That sounds like an experience.
Yeah, I was let me think. One of 5 question mark people of color in my graduating class.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I think only 3 of us were black.
Yep.
So it's like, yeah. And then both my parents are thespians.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then
how did you think I was going to turn out?
And then, she was like, well, I was surrounded by white people as well. And I said, Mom, you went to a public high school.
No, it makes a difference.
And did sports. We are from 2 completely different worlds here. And, in the more recent years, Convergence has been more diverse. But
yes,
the first couple of years where I started going, I don't think I remember seeing other people of color there, to be honest.
No.
Like, I mean, 1 or 2 in the halls, but...
Well, and again, like we didn't have as many panels about diversity either. So again, it wasn't so much in the forefront or even in the mainstream. So it was just growing up in general. It just felt very much like you were growing up in a white world and you were just walking through it.
Exactly. And then, my partner and I, we were taking a walk a couple of years ago now. I went out to visit because we don't currently live in the same state. But while we were walking, there was this fellow who, also black. He said to me that I was very lucky because I was, walking hand in hand with someone who was white.
Oh.
And I just grimaced.
Don't even know what to say to that.
Didn't respond.
Yeah, because what do you say? It's just like, there are no words to that.
It's such a weird thing to say.
Yes!
Oh. I mean, that wasn't even the worst thing that someone said to me while dating a white person. Like, I've never had any negative comments directed at me, but like the worst thing was someone walking up to me. This is with an ex. Someone walking up to me while I'm, walking hand in hand and saying, "See, love is love." And,
the well-intentioned white person. Yeah.
Cringe.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually get a lot of that. Like, my favorite is meeting family members of anybody I'm dating, and they try to bend over backwards to try to be as welcoming as possible, while in doing so, then make you feel like the most outside person ever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I do genuinely love my in-laws and everything, and they're good people, and God knows, way better than the uber Republican, probably now Trumpers that were one of my exes, so I'm very glad I did not end up with. But they're great, but like, especially during like the whole George Floyd thing and that was happening in the protests and everything, and with the rise in Asian hate crimes, and like them trying very hard to like manage their own white panic while also trying to manage the like, we're trying to be sensitive to race issues. And it was just like, at certain points it was just like, I'm gonna be silent for this Zoom call.
Yeah, I can definitely appreciate that. It's not easy.
Yeah,
not having quite the connection with your own,
yes,
or what you're told is supposed to be your culture.
Yeah,
I think might be a more accurate statement.
Yes.
There was this, and I've tried to, for me, again, I've tried to, date other black people, and it's never happened. I did go out once with someone. We went to an event that was just with lots of other black people, and I felt so out of place. Yeah.
I get that with Asian people as well.
Yeah. Isn't that just, the weirdest feeling?
Oh, yeah. It's that unfortunate feeling of, again, like, you just don't fit anywhere.
Yeah.
Where again, like among white people, again, you're never going to be white. But then again, when you're with the people who are supposed to be your people, you're just like, oh, I don't have the cultural touchstones that you guys have, and I don't understand any of this. And it's just like, oh, like it's a little bit like slightly different with Asian communities, because again, I've never actually been in an area where it was predominantly Filipino people. Like, I've always been like the only Filipino person that has been in any of my social circles. But I've been in ones where it was just like somebody took me to like their Vietnamese church, or went to like someone's, Korean celebration. And I've gone to those things, and just being that person in that room where you're just like, I know I'm surrounded by Asian people right now, and like, this should be my people. And to a certain extent, like a lot of the times it was a really cool experience. Like, you were in there and you're looking at it and you're like, this is really awesome. But it's also that idea of like, you very much feel like you're the outsider looking in.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, maybe it'll change one day.
I mean, yeah. Probably. Like, I think, again, I think it'll take a while, but it is that idea of, statistics growing, of you're starting to see more and more mixed race people walking around. And actually that's probably the group I feel the most comfortable with, are people who are of mixed races, because they, again, have that feeling of, I don't fit in either category well, and I don't feel like I'm fully anything, and I am more of a culmination of all these different aspects. And I think that is the thing that I relate to the most, of that idea of, I am a product of all these different experiences in my life and can't really fit into any specific box well. And I think that's once we get to that point where, and I think again, like we kind of see this with sexuality and gender happening now a lot more, where it's people who look at these very bland, very rigid categories of, you know, boy, girl, straight, gay, and realizing that they're like, I don't feel comfortable in any of these boxes really. I feel like I have aspects of all these different things, and we're hopefully, again, God knows, we're like one backswing away from being in bad territory again, but I feel like as a culture we're moving more and more toward that idea of it's fine if you don't fit in a box. Like if anybody really was introspective about themselves, like really took time to sit with themselves and think about it, none of us really fit into the boxes that were created. The boxes are an illusion. The boxes are a myth. Nobody fits in them perfectly. And if we can get to that point where we sort of accept that the boxes were a starting off point, they were an easy way of like ABCing your way through whatever you were looking at, whatever lens you were looking, gender, race, you know, sexuality, whatever. And that if you start looking at people, everything gets more complicated. And it's probably best if we just look at people.
So very true. So yeah, that was a lot of deepness right there. I don't know if listeners would have expected things to go in this direction.
Yes, I'm a smut writer, but I can also talk things.
Well, no, not just that. Just, you know, podcast episodes have yet to go in this direction at all.
I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. I've listened to, I think all of them are up there, and you guys go into some very interesting and deep places.
Yeah, just haven't, you know, talked about feeling like a stranger in ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, what was that? It's the meme that runs around, is that idea of like, if you can look back at the person you were 5 years ago and not cringe, that's a sign that you haven't grown. You know, I think that's the state of the world in general, is that idea of we're always moving, always changing, always becoming something else. And I think for the longest time, we always thought that we had to be static and we had to be like, this is the core of who you are and it will never change. And I think we're getting to that point where we're realizing that, oh, things are getting complicated. And I think as you do that, as you sort of sit with that idea of, you know, you will never be like, who you are now is not who you were 5 years ago, and is likely not going to be the person you will be in 5 years. I think that you kind of have to be okay with kind of feeling like a stranger in your own skin, because you can never really know yourself.
We are always learning more about who we are.
And I think overall it's an uncomfortable feeling, but it's a good one. Like, I think that's something that we should embrace more. Like, I look back on who I was 5 years ago, and while I don't think she was a bad person, I like to think that she was doing her best. I don't want to be her. Like, I've moved to a point in my life where I'm like, I don't think I could live in that skin and be okay. I think I would have to evolve and become me, who I am right now. And I feel like, again, in 5 years, I'm probably going to look back at this point and probably think the same. And I think that's okay. I think that's good. It's growth. It means that between that time, you have learned something. You have gone through something that was like, oh, yeah, that made an impact and that changed. That's probably for the best.
Yeah, 5 years ago, let me think, 2016? I knew I was polyamorous then, for sure. I don't think I knew, but probably was suspecting that I was genderqueer. I was still at my last job, that's for sure.
That tone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that job. Ugh. Won't get that into that here, but friends of mine know what I'm talking about.
The tone says everything.
Yeah. All I can say is that almost my entire staff left as shortly after I did.
Oh, yikes. Yeah, that's never good.
Yeah, a lot has changed between then and now.
Yeah.
A lot's also stayed the same due to outside forces pushing back.
Yeah.
Ah, those outside forces.
Yeah. Can't get rid of them.
Yeah. But, you know, the stuff where outside forces have no say, I'd like to think have changed for the better.
Yeah. I like to think that at the very least, again, due to a lot of like how social media works, how the media works, how just the technology in general, like the internet. God, thank God for the internet. Like, we're hearing more different perspectives and voices and sort of ideas and visions of the world that we weren't exposed to when we were younger, or even again 5-10 years ago. There are voices that we're hearing now that people are encountering for the first time and really having to sit with and wrestle with and sort of, again, integrate that into how they thought the world worked. And I think that, again, it makes things complicated. God knows. Oh, God, what was it, that school system who was trying to give the let's put more perspectives out there, but then decided that meant that if you were going to teach the Holocaust, you had to then teach opposing views.
Yes. I believe it's
Texas, of course it is. And it's one of those things where, like, we are trying very hard to confront that idea of that there are more perspectives in the world. But I think, for better or for worse, I think we're at least getting to that point where we can hear more people, and hopefully if we can hear as many voices as possible, that the ones that make the most sense bubble up to the surface, and the ones that don't fade into obscurity, hopefully. That is the hope, anyway.
Very much hope so. People stop listening to Fox and OAN.
Oh my God, there's got to be some way. Yeah, there's got to be some way to, like, I firmly believe in freedom of speech and freedom of the press. God knows, as an author who does, adult content, and God knows they're trying to push us off the internet. I'm a firm believer in that, but there's got to be a way to, like, if they're going so hard after us to get, like, banish us from all aspects of the internet, why are we not going after the people who are spreading misinformation and doing really toxic stuff to our society? Like, a pair of boobs cannot be as important to, like, manage and control as people telling people that, like, the vaccines are trying to track you. Like, we got to have better priorities here.
Well, I mean, I think part of it is who owns and bankrolls what.
Yeah.
Like, I heard that AT&T, and I haven't verified this yet, but I heard that AT&T either purposefully or accidentally bankrolled OAN.
Yep.
For those who don't know,
I heard
OAN
that too.
is One American News.
One American
America News. So the One America News Network, which is ultra-right, ultra-conservative, in quotations, news.
Yeah.
Network.
Just, crazy conspiracies. They don't even really do the news. Like, for better, for, like, God knows I don't like Fox News at all, but at least, like, their actual news portions, for the most part, they cover the news. It's just their opinion stuff that gets lumped into that causes all this issue, because then people look at the opinion stuff and think, oh, that's news too, because it's Fox News. And I really wish that they could somehow, like, if we can do this with the internet with, like, 18 plus adult sex content, we should be able to do this with news content, where we can better differentiate between the stuff that is just people talking out their butts and actual news. Like, we should be able to do this. It should be a thing. And God knows, even, like, if you go that even further with, like, the hate speech and targeting that happens on, like, YouTube and Twitch and just social media in general. Like, I don't understand why we're spending so much time. I mean, I do, because it's money. That's the issue. But, like, we spend so much time trying to, track down and, like, kick off, and people who, like, post nude pictures of themselves on the internet, or write sexy stories, or make porn, and we spend so much time trying to, shove them off the internet. And I don't understand why we aren't using that energy and directing it toward people who are doing actual harm.
Yeah. Well, Puritans.
Yes.
America being such a Puritan place.
It's the Puritans that have the money, because freaking MasterCard is making my life hell right now. Freaking MasterCard. Ugh. Like, I got the message from Patreon where, because I'm an 18 plus, content creator. And again, it was the thing where I created my Patreon years ago, and they were like, if you're 18 plus, please self-identify. And I'm like, well, I am, so I'll do it. But if I'd known then, like, years later, they were going to have me actually upload my actual driver's license to their website. And they're like, don't worry, we have super secret, security systems. And it's like, you're Patreon. I don't trust you. And I really don't want you to have, like, my address and everything loaded onto your your server, like if that gets leaked, y'all realize that I get crazy ass messages from people all the time. Really don't want them to know where I live.
Yeah. I didn't know that they required licenses now. They haven't asked me for mine yet.
That's their new policy. They haven't done it yet, but that's coming.
Oh, maybe I just
And
haven't read that
also,
email yet.
yeah, and also, it doesn't. God, I don't think it affects me, but if you post pictures of people, you also have to get the consent waivers for all those people. Which actually, I don't even know how that works for authors, because so much of us, like, we have cover art.
Yeah.
Are we expected to get consent waivers from cover art models? Because we're so far removed from that. Like, I wouldn't even know how to get that.
Oh, there's gotta be. Yeah, that. Oh.
Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna manage that. I mean, like, as much as I would like to be, famous rich author, part of me is like, thank God I'm small. Like, they're not going to be looking to like crack down on me. But what happens if you get that? And like, now I have to go talk to my publisher, who has to then talk to the website that they got the stock image from, who then has to go find the models that did the stock photo for the cover art. Like, how do you do that? Like, there's no way you would be able to do that.
Yeah, no, that's just...
It's insanity. And again, like, is this really where you want to be spending your time and money versus the person who's out there trolling, like, content creators of color and queer content creators and, like, essentially sending them death threats? Is this really where we want to put our energy?
Yeah. Disenfranchisement at its best.
I know.
Best being, most terrible, not not the good kind of best.
No.
Hooray, English, having double meanings in every word. Oh, such a powerful language.
Yeah, again, immigrant parents. I think that's part of the reasons why they just can't quite, like, it is that idea of, like, they spent so hard trying to fit in, but also we're never going to, because the nuance of just walking through this world, there's so many contradictions inherently within it that, like, trying to know whether somebody's being serious or not is a change of inflection. And to a certain extent, I think my mother has just never been able to grasp it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't blame her.
No.
Especially with how different English is from...
Tagalog.
Thank you. Yes.
Yep.
One of the people I follow on YouTube was even talking about it, and I watched one of his videos this morning.
Yeah, it's from every aspect, Tagalog is just such a different language than English. Like, and my parents, it was the running joke, because especially my dad just could not understand why every letter was not pronounced. Because in Tagalog, essentially every letter is pronounced, and they, for the most part, have the same sound. Like, an E always sounds like an E, versus like E in English can sound like anything. Like, it can sound like anything, really.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things. And then we have like silent G's and silent, K's and all this. Like, it just, in his head, it never quite worked out the way that it wanted to. So a lot of the times, like, when he would talk to people, like, he would say things like, what were his favorites? It was like, broccoli was one of the ones that he just, for the rest of his life, could not pronounce as broccoli. It was broccoli. Shakopee. So whenever we were trying to get directions to anywhere, oh man, they had to write it down. He was never going to be able to.
Yeah.
He was never going to be able to hear it and be able to recognize the names. Adina.
I don't blame him.
No.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Frickin' there's some English words. A native English speaker, still can't even say certain English words.
We're a Frankenstein language. Like, we took aspects, like, we are colonialism, the language. Like, we just took aspects of different languages and threw them together and tried to, like, Frankenstein a communication system out of them.
A couple years ago, I think I was just sitting when I thought hit me in the head. So you know how the English letter Y in Romance languages, like wait, is this French or is it Spanish? Y. And then my brain said, Justin, that's Greek I. You're literally saying Greek I when you're saying that. That is the Greek I. That's why it's sometimes a vowel.
Yeah.
It's the Greek I. And then I just had that, that head explosion, that brain blast, that information. And it all made sense, as much as English can make sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's essentially made to not make sense. Like, I
Yeah.
feel bad for anyone who English is their second language. Because I honestly, like, as much as I like, because I took French and I took Arabic. Because I took Arabic in college because I was like, French was easy. I'll take a hard language. And God, did that kick my ass. But it's one of those things where, like, as much as I struggled learning Arabic, I'm like, I don't think if I was, if I was a native speaker of any other language, I don't think I could grasp English because, like, none of the rules apply. Like, we grew up learning all these rules to English, and like, it was just like, except there's like 50 different exceptions to it. So why is this? How is this a rule?
Yeah, and then on top of that, English being the most colonial of languages at the
Yeah.
moment, is that the rules are also different depending where you're at.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, whose name I can't pronounce because she's Czech,
Yeah.
and the letter combinations in her name aren't found in English.
Yep.
At one point, we were talking, and I was helping her with the differences between United Statesian English
Yep.
and United Kingdom English.
Ooh. Yeah.
Because we come across some things that aren't the same.
Oh yeah. Quite a few.
Yeah. Like breakfast foods, American
Aluminium.
hard candy,
Biscuits.
biscuits. Yeah,
Both of which I love. I will take either of them.
I do love both biscuits.
Yes.
I hate American hard candy. Gumdrops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do not like gumdrops.
Yeah. No.
No. But yeah, so, language, English, such a weird thing.
Yeah. Well, and it's so weird that decided, I mean, like, not weird because, again, I know the history, but it's weird that was the one that decided to be the dominant language, because it's just like, it's impossible to fully learn it. Again, even most English speakers, like, that's the thing I love the most, is that people, when they look at me, are always like, why don't you speak English? And it's like, I was an English major and I'm a published author. How well do you know English? And it's just like, I bet you I could test you on like which there, and there you need to be using, and you wouldn't know, or ask you how a comma works and you'd have no idea. And it's just like, even actual native like English speakers don't know how the language works, really.
Is there something about you that most people familiar with your work wouldn't know?
Ooh, they wouldn't know. Huh. Let me think about that. Huh. Again, like I said, like, the problem is that I'm so, like, I just say whatever. And so most of the stuff that's out there is out there, and I don't think would surprise anybody who reads my work. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I've come across that anybody has been really surprised by. I don't know. That's a good question. Ooh, stumped me. No, because one of the common things I get is the idea of like, have you tried all the kinks that are in your story and in your stories? And I'm like, I mean, for the most part, I've done to the extent of some aspect of all of them. I think there's very few exceptions of anything that I don't. Oh, I suppose actually the number one thing that people are always surprised about, I don't do power play at all. Like, I don't do the dominant submissive thing, and I've never really done that ever. Like, I've definitely had partners who tried, and I'm just so bad at it. I'm so bad at it both ways. I'm not either. Like, I'm not dominant and I'm not submissive, and trying to do so. And it's weird because I'm a theater background, so role play should be fine. And I can do like role play if I'm given like a role of whatever, but like there's something about the power dynamics that just my brain like stalls. I'm so bad at it.
If we wrap it up now, where could people find you on the interblogs?
Yes. So there is always my my Patreon, which is a good place to find all the things that I have going on, like my stories and whatnot. So that one is patreon.com/Sonni de Soto, all access, all one word. And again, I'm sure we'll have links in the notes description. Otherwise, again, my Instagram is a great way to figure out just like what's going on in my world, because I post just random pictures over there. Like, if you go there now, you can see my zoo trip, which is super fun, but just random things. Plus all my publications are all there too, which is instagram.com/Sonni_D_Soto. And then if you want to know my politics, which again, with that content warning of it is on the left side, which I assume if you're listening to this, you are on that side as well. There is Twitter, twitter.com/Sonni.com/Sonni de Soto. So there are those ones. So again, links in doobly. But yeah, and just a reminder, check out my free story on my Patreon, as well as the links to the other authors that were involved in that. Because again, like we were saying, writing is hard, and publication is one of those things where you get really excited when one of your story gets accepted, and it's this huge deal, and it really does mean a lot to people. Have it crumble and fall apart, and particularly in such an awful way where it's linked to such, or it's hinged that bad feeling on it and vibes. Like if people can support them, that'd be great. So check them out.
Support your artists, folks.
Yes.
Earth is just without art.
Yes. I mean, God knows we wouldn't have gotten through this quarantine without content writers. So please, yes, realize that we are people too, and that if you really want more great content, paying for it is the best way to get it.
Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.